Hey, this is Captain Buchanan here from Fort Bragg. I've got another officer, Captain John Kirk, who I think is going to be joining the meeting shortly. His name wasn't on the invite list, but he's going to be the next representative here at Fort Bragg. So if you see his name, he's not an imposter, and we should probably let him in the meeting.
What's his name?
Well, okay.
John Kirk.
All right, it's 1 after 2, so we'll get started. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every member of this committee to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of conflicts. Does any member have any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before the committee today? If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from undue participation in that particular matter. Anybody recognize any conflicts? Just raise your hand. All right, seeing none. First matter is the approval of the minutes of our meeting in January by Mike Archer.
Good afternoon. I sent them out to some of the folks. I think Jennifer sent them to the rest of the committee for your review. Just for the minutes. I think they're accurate.
This is Gil Beck. I would move that they be approved.
Second the motion.
All right, all in favor? Are we gonna vote that with that little machine up there, Jennifer?
Yes, I think that I can do that. Yeah, here we go. Okay, I've launched it.
Very good.
The motion passes.
Okay. Next, we got the CLE report by Mike Archer and John Booker. If John Booker is here, I don't see him on the screen. Mike.
Well, at this rate, it may be a short meeting anyway. Frankly, there's not a lot to report concerning the CLE. UNC is out of the picture right now. There's nothing going on that we're actively preparing it at this point. I know that, on the other hand, the Department of Justice, from time to time, they have, not day-long CLEs, but and they notify the legal assistance offices. For example, they have a class about the SCRA, and that is not an in-person class. And then we'll just sort of send them out. But for the LAMP CLE, there's just not anything to report at this point.
When do you expect we can do something? I saw something about November.
We typically have the LAMP the CLE in October, late October, November. That's just hard to say. I think maybe we'll do something a little bit less ambitious at this point because there's so many variables. Frankly, one thing I wanted to explore with the NCBA, if Kirk is here, is the idea of going down there and doing an hour class here, an hour, a couple hours there, that they can put on the shelf for people to see when they want to.
Hey, Mike, I'm on.
Yeah, your thoughts, on an SDRA or military consumer law or whatever current events happening. The lease issues might be a big one because we're not that far away from PCS and hurricane seasons. Is the NCBA available to do that sort of thing?
Yeah. I think that's kind of the game plan. Is originally it was going to be that we do the LAMP CLE, in the fall, and the NCBA, MVLS, a little bit more oriented towards VA issues in the spring, and of course this inability for UNC to host in the fall has thrown a little bit of a damper on that. But Mike's right. We're still waiting. John Booker's still waiting to get clearance, and we're kind of holding our breath for the fall at the best, because we'll have to kind of put together quickly. But I think the better option is, as Mike said, the NCBA MVLS is going to probably do some program, and they've got it held in November, and we can weave in those types of topics again, like usual, for that the LAMP CLE will fit. And then perhaps if UNC can't go in the fall, we surely by next spring we should be back and ready in gear. And then we got to decide whether or not to put on a spring show or just fall back again like usual to the fall. So I think that there's other ways, including what Mike says, to put together some things we can pop out. They have a noon CLE as a 1 hour one that's every month that they post on there, and we can do something like that or more. So stay tuned. I think we just need to get creative until we can get back live at Chapel Hill.
Kirk, would you be the point of contact if I had a particular class topic or speaker, and would you be the point of contact to make that happen?
Yeah, I think so. Between Book and I, and some of the other folks from the MVLS, just work it through me, and we can make that happen, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kirk, you're in Arizona, right?
Yeah, I'm in Phoenix.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thanks for handling that thing last Friday for me.
No problem. It's my pleasure. We got in some good plugs for the lamps, so I think we did fine.
All right, thanks. The next item is the Major Command update. Who do we have? Who do we have to speak on that? Is that you,
Well, I
Cap?
think you have Lejeune and Bragg.
Yeah. Who do we got from Bragg? Is that you, Captain?
Yeah, this is Cap Buchanan from Fort Bragg. I
Okay.
can go ahead with the update.
Go ahead.
All right, so far, business as usual. Bragg staying very busy. Only two major updates. One is about taxes, which I think Ms. Egan is going to touch on. One issue that's cropped up lately that I would mind getting some feedback on is legal assistance has been tasked with providing support to EFMP members. That's the Exceptional Family Member Program, and that's for soldiers who have children with special needs of a wide variety who are entitled to specific services and accommodations when they're going to school. They tend to be pretty big issues, whether it's getting a personal tutor or whatever accommodation the school has to make. But it can be a big undertaking to get that done. And frankly, it requires some specialization and legal knowledge that right now the legal assistance attorneys don't have. So we're running into problems where we're being asked to provide this service, and we don't necessarily have the manpower or the training to really adequately do so, or really the continuity, because some of these issues can take quite a while to resolve. So we wanted to reach out to you guys and see if there are resources that you know of that we can direct these soldiers to when they're looking to get help with their EFMP children. Right now, the ABA has a program where they'll offer some free legal services, but that's only for E6 and below. And what we're finding is a lot of these soldiers who have children of the age where they need these EFMP services tend to be above the E6 level, right? We're looking at senior enlisted and then on the officer side. So they can't use the ABA services. So we're trying to find if there's some good pro bono attorneys, some kind of network, state by state, that these soldiers can use to help them through this legal process.
Kipper, are you looking for estate planning type service, or exactly what are you looking for?
So the way this works is a soldier will PCS. Let's say they come here to Fort Bragg. They want to send their kid to school, but their kid is in the EFMP program and needs certain accommodations, and the school won't provide it. And so what happens then is that the service member has to go into court or launch some legal action to assert their rights to get the school to cooperate. And it's that navigating what rights they have and then how that applies to school boards, because sometimes these accommodations are expensive, and so some school boards will push back on making the accommodation right away. And so as time goes on, obviously the kids are out of school or they're not getting the appropriate learning. So it's something that needs to happen relatively quickly. And so they're looking for attorneys to kind of guide them through the process and then make sure the schools understand their legal obligation to provide whatever services these kids need.
Hey, Captain,
Mark.
Yeah, I've got a couple of
Okay. Can I jump in on this real quick? This is directly what we're working on in the North Carolina Military Affairs Commission. We have a Quality of Life Committee, which I chair, which deals specifically with K through 12 issues. And on that committee are the MLOs, military liaison officers, and sometimes for each of the main counties that are adjacent to our installations. And they specifically tackle those issues and work with DPI and their jurisdiction and their school systems to make that happen. So they're both well-schooled and great advocates for this position. So to me, the workaround, without having to involve as much attorneys, is to make sure legal assistance gets those parents directly to the MLO in their school and county or whatever it fits, and they will be the advocates and make things happen. Believe me, this should not be an issue. The MLOs are well versed in this, and DPI is well familiar with accommodations. So, I can give you a clearinghouse. Doug Taggart up there. So if you could send me a note offline, I'll get you all the information you need, and I think it will solve the problem completely.
Well, I hope it does. The Marine Corps tackled this issue some time ago. The EFMP families were asked, what do you need that we're not giving you? And they said, we need an advocate to deal with the exceptional family member issues. They can be accommodations because they need a special animal. They can be related to estate planning because they need a special needs trust. But by and large, it has to do with having schools do an individual education plan.
Right.
And it is absolutely related to, you need to specialize in that. So the folks over there at Bragg are going to have a hard time. They have a legal assistance attorney dabble in it for a little while, be a legal assistance attorney, and then leave 8 months later and have the next person. So we hired a civilian who does that. That's their sole job, and they do that full time, and it is a full-time job. She may be able to provide some resources, because we brought the person online and said, all right, start swimming. And they self-educated. They have some other resources we can send to you folks. It seems to me that there may be a need for some basic understanding as well of the issues that arise, and she would be helpful in doing that. Don't send all your soldiers to here. There's just not enough hours in the day. But she would be able certainly to give resources and to help train the folks there that are dealing with this. And I'm not as confident as Kirk is that our school liaisons have that sort of expertise.
Yeah, if it's a pure legal documents and things like that need to be prepared, that Mike's spot on that. I'm just talking about creating the situation where this doesn't come up. They actually provide the accommodation. You don't have to fight for it. That was more on the equity side versus the legal side.
Mark Sullivan, your hand's still up?
Yeah, my hand's still up. I've got some suggestions. Now, look, Captain Buchanan, I spent 3 years doing core legal assistance in the 70s in your office, and I wouldn't know how to do this. And the people that I had under me wouldn't know how to do this. So I have no doubt that there's no one in your office that really knows how to do this, including yourself.
That's
And I
absolutely
turn that
correct.
around and I say, I've been a board certified specialist for 30 years in family law, and I wouldn't know how to do this. I myself would not know how to do this unless I started concentrating on it for the next 4, 6, or 8 months. So I highly recommend that you follow on with the hiring of a specialist. When you're tasked to do an additional job outside of your normal legal assistance, you start looking around, and the recommendation that I think you'll find for many of us is you need to hire somebody that can do this as a niche job and do a good job of it, rather than trying to do a modest or incompetent job or partially competent job. You need somebody that can really do this. That's a good recommendation that I had thought of before Mike mentioned it. I have a couple of existing recommendations and then one that I can help you out with. First of all, is the North Carolina Bar Association has for many years had a military volunteer program. And that program could be used to solicit lawyers to help out in this area. It'd be difficult because it's a very highly specialized area, but the North Carolina Bar Association may be of help to you. You probably know this already, Captain Buchanan, but we are a bifurcated bar. We have the mandatory bar, which is what we're in right now, and then we have a voluntary bar association. So the North Carolina Bar Association may have a program, a volunteer military program that can help you. It also has a second possibility, and that's the young lawyers. The young lawyers in the North Carolina Bar Association are always looking for new projects. And one of the projects that has struck good chords with the young lawyers is military projects. And it's ordinarily stuff like doing wills and powers of attorney on a particular day of a particular month. But the young lawyers section could also help you out. A third point about the North Carolina Bar Association is that they do CLEs in the area of special needs and education issues in family law. You know, this stuff comes up in custody cases. And so there may be some CLE programs that are available there that a point of contact with the North Carolina Bar Association could help out with. And lastly, for the North Carolina Bar Association, they have CLE binders. They have training binders that they develop over the years for each of the CLE programs. Back in the day, 15 years ago, we used to have Ray Roop, who was a member of our committee and the director of the North Carolina Bar Association, help us out with this. He was a CLE director, and he would give us the surplus binders. If they didn't need them, then he'd give them to us. And I saw a notice 1 week ago saying, binder sale. We're selling binders, half off. Tell us what you want. We'll ship it to you, half the price of usual. So again, we need to connect with the North Carolina Bar Association to get the surplus binders that may be available in the area of custody with specific reference to educational issues and the exceptional child. The last point that I have has to do with the American Bar Association family law section, because I know that several programs have been put on for exceptional children there that could be helpful to you, Captain Buchanan, in training up your current slew of legal assistance attorneys, or perhaps a new specialist. I've got a good friend, Ron Nelson from Kansas, who has special needs children and who has put on excellent programs in this area. What I will do is contact him and the family law section in general of the American Bar Association, because I'm on the liaison committee with the ABA LAMP and the ABA family law section. I'll contact them and I'll say, what could you provide to us? Captain Buchanan, if you'll write me a squib that says what you need help on so that I have something in writing, I can forward that to the right people at the American Bar Association and see what free resources we can get for you at the American Bar Association family law section.
Thank you, Mark. James, you got a question? James Payne. You're on mute.
Hey, Skipper, this is an area that my wife, who's an attorney, specializes in. that is special needs trusts and that sort of thing. She's an elder law and estate planning lawyer. And if you'll send me an email, I'll put you in touch with her so that you can, there may be something there that she can do to help you out.
Yes, sir. Anything you can get, we'll definitely appreciate.
All right. It's what she does for a living. She's good at it. So.
All right, that's Fort Bragg. Do we have any other? How about Camp Lejeune?
Can I just interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
Yeah. Hey, Gil, turn off your camera, man. We're looking at your ear the whole time we're doing it. A little distracting. Thank you, buddy. That's all. Back to you, Mark.
Anybody from Camp Lejeune?
If
Yeah.
This is Marie Joyner from Forscom. I'm Mike. I have a LinkedIn report, and I do need to jump on. I just want to say hello to everybody. It's been a while since I've participated in. I know Captain Cannon is giving the report, but just wanted to say hello to Forscom.
I didn't get much of that. You're breaking up pretty bad.
I'm sorry. This is Marie Joyner from.
I still can't hear you.
Okay.
Stephen's phone, go ahead.
That was Marie Joyner. I think she was just saying that she had to leave.
Oh, okay. I couldn't hear a word she
I
said.
understand.
Okay, I guess that's it with major command updates. Next is our webpage status, Mr. Shields.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Hey,
Chairman.
Mike, before we
Yes.
get off of Bragg, I think Ken Buchanan mentioned something about the tech center. I don't remember any report on that.
So we do have a tax center update. One
okay.
of our civilian attorneys, Ms. Egan, is going to give that update.
Okay.
So I guess we can do now.
All right, yeah, I'm
So
sorry.
that's it for me, but I'm going to say this is unfortunately my last meeting with you guys. I'm going to be moving out of legal assistance here shortly. So it's been great joining in on these meetings and chatting with you guys. Captain John Kirk is going to be taking over, and I think he's listening in on Ms. Egan's line. So you'll be working with him going forward.
All right, good luck to you.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Miss Egan? I saw you a minute ago. There you are. You mute. No sound?
If she's on mute and she's on the phone, she needs to *6 and then that even though she's got a mute button on her phone.
She should be good now.
Okay, you're good.
Well, she's unmuted, but apparently her audio
Right
is not.
there. Meredith Egan, calling Meredith Egan. Meredith
What kind of
Egan.
meeting do you run anyway there, Ramos? Jesus
shut up.
Christmas.
All right, let's go to Bye Shields, and then we can get to Miss Egan once we can make connection. Go ahead, Bye.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'll be brief. On the 9th of February, we had an interesting request for someone to have information listed on our website. We actually had a person who wanted a guide regarding cosmetology school and licenses to be included on the LAMP web committee. After an appropriate discussion with the executive committee, our esteemed committee counsel, Jennifer Porter, made the appropriate declination of that opportunity. On the 3rd of March, we had a revised silent partner entitled Fixing the Frozen Benefit Rule posted. Mark, did you want to say anything about your revisions for that?
Thank you. Nothing substantive about it. I wanted to tone it down a little bit because it sounded like I was doing legislative advocacy. I just changed it so that I said, if you represent the former spouse, you want to advocate this position. If you represent the service member retiree, you want to advocate that position. That's all I did.
Okay, great. Thank you. On the 19th of March, Jennifer Porter passed on the ABA LAMP Committee CLE opportunities that Gil Beck had identified for us. I want to say that I participated in both those. I want to thank Gil and Jennifer for that. If you have not taken advantage of that, it's a tough time to get CLE credits. That's a great opportunity. I recommend that you do that. Finally, on our membership list, please look at the list. If you have any updates or corrections to that list, please email me with a copy to Jennifer Porter and Jennifer Duncan. Mike, that's all I have unless there are some questions.
Anybody have any questions of Mr. Shields? Okay, is the Fort Bragg command back on?
Hey, this is Captain Buchanan again. We're having some technical difficulties, but I do have Miss Egan here in the room with me. So I'm going to turn my phone over and let her give the tax center update.
Okay.
Okay, I apologize for that earlier. Just very briefly, wanted to let you all know that we recently had a remote site review. We're currently running a Gold Star Tax Center, so it's very. Additionally, we were provided permission from the head of the IRS to be able to provide kitty tax or the 8615, which is out of scope for all other VITA sites. So we're basically a test site for this tax year. Depending on how that goes, it will be deemed to be within scope for all other military VITA sites moving forward. So that is pretty significant. And that is it. And thank you to Mike Archer for his help in extending some POCs for us at the beginning of the tax year. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have new business publication subcommittee update with Michelle.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So just a reminder, what we're doing is we have a committee that is tasked with updating the legal resources that are posted on the LAMP website. A lot of those were drafted by Mark years ago, and some of them are kind of sorely out of date. So we've actually been making some really great progress on this in the last quarter. Mike facilitated outsourcing the initial review of a number of these documents with the UNC School of Law Pro Bono program. So we had, I think, maybe 5 law students review and make track changes, edits to those. Mike has gone through and reviewed a lot of them, and we still have some that, some others that need to be reviewed by attorneys after the review by the law students. So I have now been taking them, finalizing them, putting, resources in, formatting them how they should be formatted. I'm going to send them to Mark before they are ready to be published, just to get his seal of approval, as we all want Mark's seal of approval. And then we just need to facilitate how we're going to get those posted. One question, I had of Jennifer and was whether we wanted to kind of piecemeal the posting, post, 1 or 2 as they're ready, or kind of wait and do them all at once. I think the consensus was that it would probably be easier to piecemeal it rather than have a huge task to upload all at one time. But I'm happy to get some feedback from the group on that if there's any input. And if anyone wants to take some of these articles to review, that would be great. But if not, I think we will be okay with what the resources we do have.
Thank you, Michelle. Next we have Kristen Cohn. Kristen, you're in the car and you're on mute. There you go.
I am. I was in my office, but it was going in and out, so I came out to the car. Good afternoon. So I'm working on the information disclosure subcommittee. What we are doing is putting together individual publications, pamphlets, however you want to word it, on accessing military records, medical records, pay records, whatever the different necessities would involve. So we've been working, trying to get information from some of the National Guards. We have people in our committee that are working on the active duty services, and we hope to put them also up on the web page. We don't have a proposed time yet. We're still reaching out, trying to get resources and information, but I think it's going well. And if anybody has any information or interest in giving us support or any kind of research they've done in that area before that we can use, it would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Kristen. Next, we've got Mike Archer up. Summary of information provided to the military working group.
Sure. First, what is the military working group? It's representatives, the heads of legal assistance from each of the armed forces, liaisons with the Department of Justice and the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, and a field representative such as myself. And they get together via Zoom at this point every quarter, and I've provided written information about that. So in the interest of time, we'll just talk about a couple of things. The CFPB did take several enforcement actions. The most relevant to the military have to do certainly with Omni Finance. Anybody that's been around a military installation of any size is aware that Omni Finance is probably right outside the gate. They also have online services. They had enforcement action taken, and they lend at the highest rates that you are lawfully allowed to lend at. They got fined because they violated the Military Lending Act because they made they required people to make their repayments via allotment, and contracts that are covered by the MLA prohibit that. In the case of future income payments, we have this outfit that would tell military retirees, assign to me a portion of your military, the next 6 months or year of your military retired pay, and I will give you some money right now that is much less than that. So it's essentially a loan. You give, let's say you have $1,000 a month in military retired pay, and they'll say, give me the next 6 months of your military retired pay as it comes due, and I will give you $4,000 now. These folks said, well, this isn't a loan, which is false. They also violated the law because military pay, retired pay, can't be lawfully assigned to anyone. And then once you decide that it is a loan, they also violate truth in lending because they don't disclose the actual effective rates of interest. And it's not surprising because they approach 200% per annum. So they were also fined, and in that case, the DOJ took additional action and indicted the main business manager of that. We have Lenda Up Loans. That violated the Military Lending Act by lending in excess of the 36% that is authorized for loans to military service members and the dependents. If you're following along on the written information, I just included Santander Consumer, not because of necessarily the substance of their violation, but because they're just such a frequent flyer. They have been, had consent orders, they had enforcement action taken against them twice before by the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, and then another time by not less than 33 attorneys general in the United of various states. Both the DOJ and the General Accounting Office have been particularly interested in the SCRA and losing SCRA rights through either a waiver or through a mandatory arbitration provision in a contract. You know, you have all these SCRA rights about courts, but if you agree or are coerced into arbitration, then all those court-related SCRA rights vanish into thin air. And so both of those organizations were interested in trying to do a fix on those things. Also was reported that the Virginia legislature, my notes that were sent out say pending legislation to prohibit waiver of the SCRA in leases. That legislation was in fact passed on the 31st of March. It is effective July 1st of this year, and it does two things. Well, it does a number of things, but two most important for military persons. The first is it says it's an illegal practice for a lease to put in it that they're waiving the SCRA. And secondly, it says you can't discriminate in the sale or rental of houses based on military status. So therefore, the landlord can't say, well, I don't want to rent to you because you might assert your SCRA rights. That's prohibited as well. So that is a kind of a down and dirty summary of the military working group.
Well, Mike, that kind of leads into the next topic, does it not? Your next topic?
It most certainly does. The General Accounting Office was directed by Congress to investigate matters about for both of those issues. And they contacted me, they contacted Dwayne Alexander out at Norfolk, Mary Hostetter at our headquarters level. But again, they're saying, well, what are your thoughts and what evidence do you have concerning these issues? So I'm particularly interested in getting feedback from folks at Fort Bragg or at other installations that say, I just looked at a contract that had an SCRA waiver or a mandatory arbitration provision. More interested in the SCRA waivers because the arbitration provisions, they're everywhere. And don't try and buy a car without an arbitration provision in it. Good luck. But again, because they're investigating, and I'm one of the reporters, if you have information about arbitration waivers of SCRA, please send it along, and I'm happy to discuss that with you.
Mark, you're on a roll. Don't stop now.
Okay.
I'll try not to hold back. Mike, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
You said that this is the military working group that you're in. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you referenced retired pay in the context of consumer matters. Is the military working group limited to consumer matters, or is it more broad concerning other things that could come into a legal assistance office?
An interesting question. It is not necessarily limited to those things. Those are certainly the things that come up most often to the CFPB. But if it's something that the Department of Justice would be interested relating to the military, I don't know why not.
Well, the reason I ask is because there's a particular area that legal assistance attorneys and civilian lawyers in North Carolina come in to focus on, and that is the taxation of military retired pay. So let's follow up on what you talked about concerning the garnishment of retired pay. The issue is when it's not garnished for spousal property division. That is, when you have less than 10 years of marriage during 10 years of military service, there's no way of getting a garnishment from DFAS for property division of that pension. There's also no garnishment in the 90-day interim processing period after the order for pension division has been submitted to DFAS. In both of those periods of time, John Doe has to pay directly Jane Doe, his ex-wife, the share of the pension. And the issue is she taxable on the money she gets? And does he get an exclusion for the payment that he makes? If the answer is no, then he's paying taxes on both her share and his share if there's no 10-10 overlap and we can't get a garnishment from DFAS. So my question is, can we get some authoritative guidance to tell the legal assistance attorneys who help the negotiation of separation agreements and civilian lawyers who may be appearing in court or dealing with settlements what the taxability status is of military pension division when it's not a DFAS garnishment? That is, when there's no 10-10 overlap, so retiree pays former spouse directly, or in the 90-day interim period. It would be helpful if we could find that answer, and if your people could either ask the Armed Forces Tax Council or someplace else to give us some authoritative guidance on that.
Well, we can certainly ask, and I'd like to get together with you offline to make sure I ask precisely the right question too.
And Mark, this is Lorna. We write into our separation agreements just to make it clear that it's not taxable by the payor retiree, it is taxable to the payee spouse. And so far, our tax center hasn't had a problem actually effectuating that with tax returns. But certainly it would be an issue if people don't want to agree to that.
I understand, and the concern I have is regardless of what they agree to, if you can't find authorization in Title 26 of the U.S. Code, which is the Internal Revenue Code, then it's not going to fly, no matter what the parties have agreed to. We just want to get clear understanding that if John Doe is taxable on the entire amount, then that's the rule. We don't want people to be audited.
Right. I'm just telling you it has flown. Whether or not
it should.
It should. It's a different story. But.
Okay, Mike Archer, you got the next item.
I do. As a result of Hurricane Florence, there were an awful lot of military houses on base that were damaged. And there were an awful lot of people in those military houses for quite some time without them being fixed properly. You may recall that became a pretty big issue for some time. One of the things that grew out of that was a directive from Congress to say, well, you folks need to make a universal PPV lease. That is, most base housing these days is run by private companies with some oversight from the installation. So the public-private venture. So that is in work right now, and it seems to me that there's a lot of things that they need to include in these, or are not. Basically, you got to do a line-by-line review of this, or you're going to get things that you won't like. One thing that is novel in these PPV draft leases is this landlord-tenant dispute mechanism. And it says essentially, your base military housing office will make an informal method, and you need to do that first. And if that doesn't work, then there's a procedure whereby you follow the right paper, make the right claims, there's deadlines for things, and essentially you can say, I want the next 2 months of my rent to be sequestered, and then the commanding officer of the installation, actually that's one of the things that ought to be changed, the CO or his designee. I don't see the 2 or 3 star personally involved in a lot of these, but they have the authority to determine where that 2 months of rent goes, whether the person can get out of the lease early, whether they can, and to direct some other things as well. So overall, it seems to me to be an improvement, but there's still a lot of work to go. So what I did is I sent out to folks my comments in summary, and an even shorter summary, and then the actual draft PPV lease itself, to say for 2 reasons. One is this is coming, and secondly, as before, when we first went to these PPV housings, it seemed to me that there was a great emphasis on the contract between the United States and the private company providing the houses, and not a heck of a lot of focus on the contract, the lease that was between the tenant and the landlord, and looks like there's a little bit more focus this time on that, and this might be the one opportunity. So if people have comments about the lease that I have not made, or if they concur or they disagree with me on something, I'm interested in getting that information and pushing it up to those folks who are negotiating this thing. I would also note as a final is that it specifically says that legal assistance attorneys can be involved in this process.
Okay, so do you want us comments from the committee on review after reviewing that proposed lease?
That's right. Those who care to, comment on the lease that I've sent out, and on the detailed comments that I sent up to our negotiators.
I'll be glad to give you my 2 cents, but I haven't looked at a lease in like 35 years.
Well, you can pass on that one then.
Thanks, Mike. I believe the next item is Kirk.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. I'll be real quick on the Military Affairs Commission. Mainly focused in on the General Assembly's work right now. Just so you know, and Mark Sullivan, Marco, you brought up a good point on federal income tax, but the state income tax on military retiree pension they're making a run at it again. There's 5 bills in the House and Senate to exempt state taxes on military pensions, one of which, House Bill 83, actually has got some legs. My sense is that's the lead bill, and there's a lot of appetite right now for this. And I think, as you know, unless you served on active duty for 5 years prior to, it'd be 1990, something like the early 90s, you are subject to state tax on your military pension. So that's a big deal. We're there's like 30 states that have no state tax. We're trying to be military friendly, so that's going to hopefully get through. More to follow. The next is the military child student enrollment, tuition and procedures. There's a bill out there that Representative Cleveland's working on to clarify enrollment and in-state tuition for those that are PCSing out and their child is still there and is already enrolled or not with in-state tuition at a state college or community college. So it's a real win-win for the folks that's sitting for governor's signature right now. So those two bills are going to be really, really helpful. There's a justice bill, the Veterans Justice Intervention Program, and I'm not overly familiar with that. It's called No Veteran Left Behind. My sense is it's like Veterans Treatment Court Light that kind of goes across, and it's a matter of gaining metrics and making the justices aware of unique military situations that could impact justice for the veterans and frankly, active duty members that are going before courts in our state for a variety of matters. So I think that's going to be something, and that'll probably that's in committee now, and that may well come out. So those are kind of the three big things going on, and then the Military Affairs Commission continues its work on a variety of other things, but one of the focuses is certainly on that. So that's what I've got, Mike.
Thank you, Kirk. David, anything?
Yeah, I will say I heard today that House Bill 83 that Kirk mentioned that looked like it had legs was going to be read to the legislature, I believe, today, and then they pulled it at the last minute, and we don't know why. But if there's ever been a chance for passing that legislation and granting a military retiree pay tax exemption, this is probably the year. So keep your fingers crossed for those of you who came on active duty after August of 1985.
So is there information that we can get? I have a lot of retirees that are surprised because their parents were waived, but now they're not. And I think they would support it. Is there something that we can put out to get people to contact their state representatives or whatever?
Well, we're not an advocacy organization so much as except for the state bar, but what I have seen a lot of people do is reach out to veterans organizations in their area, reach out to their state legislators, and just say it's about time. We're behind 30 states, and every time a legislator says this is the most military-friendly state, they need to back up and really think about what our status is on how we treat our retiree pay for what is now a growing number of recent retirees, because most of those retiring now came on active duty after that court decision way back when, which helped people like myself, some of the old graybeards who came on active duty before that time. But anybody can reach out to their elected officials. The State House is the one that's wrestling with it right now, although the state Senate has similar bills, and Jim from Harnett County, Bergen, is that who it is, Kirk?
Yeah, Bergen.
Yeah, Bergen. Jim Bergen is leading the charge on that one. And there's a lot of legislative support for it, but there's also some legislative support, not nearly as much, for every federal and state employee, whether military or not, to get a tax exemption as well. And that seems to be a little bit of a hang up. But in answer to your question, yes, you can reach out to your legislators, but I also think veterans groups, American Legion, things like that can be very useful voices for the retirees.
Hey, Mike, let me just add that it's not just necessarily about economics, but it is. But it also affects lawyers in the sense of we're trying to keep the people retiring either that came from North Carolina or traversed North Carolina in their service to stay here and be part of the giant pool of wonderful educated employees, and that includes a lot of JAGs. So that's part of the reason that this is appropriate to at least report on for the LAMP.
Kirk, if I might ask a question, there was a bill proposed before concerning school enrollment, not about tuition, but various circumstances where you couldn't get enrolled in public school for some technical reasons because you were out of state or you had orders, and that looked like it was going to pass, but then it was attached to something that people didn't like, and it didn't happen. And I was wondering if you were tracking that issue at all.
I want to say it's in House Bill 53, the one I mentioned about enrollment and tuition. But let me verify that. Mike, you're right. I was going to ask you the same question, but I think it's part and parcel of that. If it's not, we need to make sure it gets reviewed, because I think everyone was in favor of it. It was a great, in fact, it came out of a situation at Lejeune. So it's absolutely, let me follow up on that, Mike, but I want to say it's part of the HB 53 that's on the governor's desk.
Okay. We're
Out
just
here, Mike.
We're just about out of time. Anybody got anything else? All right. Hopefully, we're going to be able to meet in person in Asheville in July. So unless anybody's got anything else, we'll just adjourn the meeting. See y'all in July.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.